Hello everyone, my name is Jakob Hillhouse, and I will be debating that the United States was correct in pulling out of Afghanistan. This may be a controversial decision in modern politics, simply because many Americans are not informed about the war in Afghanistan and the many changes that have occurred over the last 20 years. I would first like to clear something up. My heart breaks for the Afghan people. I do not believe that this was the outcome any of us wanted 20 years ago, but this was the only outcome that could occur with the circumstances that have happened over the last 20 years. We've been losing this war for over 15 years since the United States began focusing on the war in Iraq. We have had 4 presidential administrations oversee just one war, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. Let us start with some statistics. 19 years, 10 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days. That is how long this war has lasted. 19 years ago, I was just 1 year old, and now here I am, studying the same conflict at university. 2,448 American service members killed in the war. 3,846 U.S. contractors. 66,000 Afghan national military and police. 1,144 NATO members, over 110,000 Afghan civilians, 51,000 Taliban and other opposition fighters, 444 aid workers, and 72 journalists. If we had stayed in Afghanistan, these costs would have only grown higher. Although many in the government of Afghanistan fought the rise of the Taliban, the amount of corruption and political instability simply could not have lasted. I do want to give credit to those in Afghanistan that did stay and did continue the fight, and it would be harmful to their legacy if we were to completely ignore their sacrifice. President Biden chose to reject the military-industrial complex. 20 years of occupation, 20 years of waste, and 20 years of death. We may have helped the cities and urban areas, but our failure to address the problems of rural Afghans ultimately led to our failure in Afghanistan. We failed to realize how we are complicit in the rise of terrorism. As I said, I was a very young child when the war in Afghanistan began. There's now an entire generation of youth whose lives have been defined by the war in Afghanistan. How difficult is it to believe that a young child in the early 2000s who saw their innocent parents die in the United States airstrike may one day take up arms for the Taliban? We bombed cities, we killed innocents, all in the name of stopping terrorism. We fail to realize how in the eyes of the Afghan civilians, we may be seen as terrorists or imperial occupiers. The Taliban is our failure. We created it, and now we lost to it. We have been involved in Afghanistan since the Soviets invaded. We supported the Mujahideen, who eventually led way to the birth of the Taliban. Our presence in the nation only breeds more violence. Some may argue that our presence in the nation made the country better for civilians. This is true in certain ways, especially in the cases of those who live in urban areas such as the capital city, Kabul. But overall, the presence of the United States troops only aggravated existing attitudes and led to more and more violence within the nation. The United States is not the world police. Our military simply cannot solve every problem. It is not able to, and we are not able to police the world in all of its different conflicts. At this point, I would like to address the counter-argument. They will likely argue about human rights abuses that the Taliban will inflict. I do not agree with any of the tenets of the Taliban, and their actions are simply deplorable and cannot be justified. But if the United States were to invade every country with human rights abuses, we'd be at war with half the world. We'd have to invade China, wage war against Myanmar, Belarus, Venezuela, Syria, Equatorial Guinea, Egypt, South Sudan, Libya, North Korea, and dozens of others. I know this sounds like a whataboutism argument, but it's simply the truth. The opposition argument will likely debate how the country may devolve into civil war. But once again, our mission was never state building. Every nation runs the risk of civil war, even the United States, and we cannot become engaged in every nation that is still developing. Not every problem can be solved with military force. 20 years, thousands dead, and Afghanistan is still essentially a failed state run by a rogue reactionary group. President Biden made the correct decision. We tend to see this war in numbers, as statistics like the ones I just read. But fundamentally, these are people's lives. These are real people who had hopes and dreams that are dead now. This is a whole generation of people in Afghanistan who knew nothing but war and death. The war in Afghanistan represents a failure in using the right intelligence. It represents a failure in planning and a failure to understand local attitudes. But ultimately, we should not see the war as a failure. We should see it as a chance to grow, a chance to become better, so we don't leave a failed state after 20 years of occupation ever again. Afghanistan itself represents the problems of the 21st century. And if we are to address the problems of the future, we must first understand our mistakes in the past. I still have hope for the nation of Afghanistan. Even though our troop presence may have ended, it does not mean we are abandoning the region entirely. The war in Afghanistan was long, winding, and ultimately a loss to the Taliban. But ultimately, the United States made the correct decision in ending America's longest war. Thank you so much for listening to my debate, and I hope you have a great day.